Hi, welcome to making homemade bread the easy way. I'm going to give you a little example of how to simply make some homemade bread. This is one that we keep in the refrigerator, and some of the leftover dough from the previous batch is kept, and we can use that fermented dough to add to the flavor of the next batch. So you just kind of push it down off the sides, and we're going to use this as a bit of a starter for the new dough that we're going to make. This has already got some fermented yeast in it and already growing, ready to help. So now we pour in 3 cups of lukewarm water. We just kind of pour it in easy and slow. And this is just the start. It's warm, not too warm, but just a little bit on the warm side, lukewarm. And we're going to mix in some of the old dough with that. And you can see some of the strands where the structure's already started on that previous dough. And now we're going to add to that first some yeast, and this is 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. Just sprinkle it over the water and gently stir it in. It'll mix in with the previous existing dough. You can just gently mix that in there. Nothing magic about this stage, just trying to get it mixed in. Then we're going to add to that 1.5 tablespoons of salt. And again, just sprinkle it over the water and stir it in. As you can see, this is a pretty complex process. Not. The old dough will just gradually start to dissolve into the water. Now we're going to add the flour, and this is 6.5 cups of unbleached white flour. Just spread it over the top like that. And the next stage here is all we really want to do is mix it in. It's not complicated. We're not trying to knead it. There's no kneading required in this recipe at all. The only thing that we want to make sure happens at this stage is that we get good hydration of the dough. So all the flour that you've just stirred in, just gradually and gently keep mixing it through so that the water is distributed well throughout the flour. We're not trying to set up any structure at this point like you would if you were kneading. All we're trying to do is make sure that we have good hydration so that when we leave the dough to rise, it's been well hydrated all through the flour. Again, nothing magic here. It's just a matter of taking the time to gently and gradually stir in the flour into the water, and the yeast and the salt will be mixed into the entire mixture. And it's going to make a really kind of a shaggy dough that will probably look like a bit of a mess, quite frankly. It's not going to look anything like the kind of dough that you would typically get when you're making bread, but it's going to be a very, very useful and very, very simple way to make bread. So as we start to get this hydrated, it's starting to come along pretty good now. Again, there's no real secret to how you know that it's hydrated other than by watching for any light patches of flour and mixing that in. And as we get to the end here, we're almost hydrated enough, I think, pretty close. So the next stage is going to be to let this shaggy dough just sit and ferment. So it's going to sit on the countertop, loosely covered, for about 2 hours before you put it in the fridge. Now, theoretically, you could go ahead and make bread right away, but it wouldn't have much flavor to it. So we're just going to cover that loosely and let it ferment on the tabletop. When we're done, we'll put it back into the fridge, and we can leave it in the fridge for up to 2 weeks before we decide to make dough. Now, what will the dough look like when we go to get it? Well, it looks something like this. I'm just going to cut off a hunk and shape it into these shapes that you will use a little bit later on a stone in the oven. And that's how simple it can be to make homemade bread. Just pop these little guys into the oven, and very soon you'll have nice crusty homemade bread. So that's how simple it can be. Thanks a lot for checking it out. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.